Hello, I'm Heather. I have a little story that I wanted to share, inspired by a friend. Kind of reminded me of this experience. So, a couple of years ago, a few years, and definitely hadn't had any sort of like kind of shared any sort of sexual energy with anybody for quite a while. And so when I started seeing somebody, and we started moving in the direction of it, and um, he also was in relationship with another person, and so they had agreements, and so it helped actually that there were really clear boundaries about what was agreed upon between the two of them, as well as what felt good to me. And the man I was dating and I would have discussions about it basically anytime before we started getting all, you know, sexually engaged or snuggling or just kind of going into that space. Before we even started, we would have a clear conversation about what was on the table, what was available, what was outside of my comfort level, what was outside of their agreements, and so we knew kind of what the container was that within which we could play. And at first I was frustrated by that. Hopefully that beeping will stop really quickly. Oh, maybe it's not going to stop. Damn it. Okay, now it's done.
Why you gotta yell at me so long?
Okay. Shoot. Anyway, okay. So anyhow, it was quite clear to me anytime we would engage, kind of what was safe to expect and what wasn't, and it felt good to me. I think what I was saying is that in some ways it didn't feel good because I'm like, well, where's the spontaneity in that, and why can't we go all the way, But when it came right down to it, my nervous system really didn't want to go all the way and really wanted to take things really, really slowly. So in this particular incident, he and I had, we had definitely had some kind of, sexy play times a few times. And there was some tension built up between us. And but the boundary was still very clearly no touching under underpants, underclothes, underwear, no touching under underwear, no direct skin to genital contact. So that was clear, and we were playing and getting pretty excited, and he surprised me by putting his finger inside of me. And at the time, I was very energized and excited and turned on. And I remember kind of going, well, that's beyond what we'd agreed to. And again, like, it's been a little while, so I can't remember exactly what I said, but I believe at the time I was like, hey, like, that's kind of outside of the agreements you have with your other lover. And he was like, yeah, you're right. And he kind of backed off and stopped doing it. But I also was, I'm trying to remember, like, maybe, anyway. I remember bringing a little something up at the time, and I probably also encouraged it at the time a little bit more because I'm like, oh my God, it feels so good. So the next day, I knew we had to have a conversation. So the next time we saw each other, I was like, okay, so I've thought about it. And I think it was really clear that you putting your finger in me was outside of what we'd agreed. It came as a surprise to me. Yes, it felt really good. And I didn't ask you to stop at the time. But now I wish I would have had you stop at the time, or maybe he did. I don't, honestly, that piece isn't super duper clear, but what I'm trying to model here is the conversation that we had afterwards. because I honestly think this is a really common situation. My friend who called me and was very, very upset, she's like, we hadn't agreed about intercourse, but we were both really turned on and it felt really good. And so when I realized that it wasn't a dildo that he was using, but it was his actual penis, I knew that it was outside of the agreement, but I went ahead and said, it's okay, keep going. But then the next day she was really upset about it. The next day, in my experience, I was pretty upset about it because it was a boundary crossing. It was something we'd agreed upon, and he went beyond it. And so, yes, it was exciting and energizing and a big turn on, and it wasn't okay. So, so we talked about it, and I'm like, we can't change the agreements when we're all turned on and all drunk, basically drunk on hot, being turned on. So we need to be very clear and very firm. We have discussions when we are at the dinner table before we go into the play space. And if there's any desire on either of our parts to change agreements, we have to stop what we're doing and go back upstairs to the table, cool down, and talk with our clear heads. We don't get to make decisions with our turned on brains, because we're not probably going to make the same decisions we would when we're all hot and bothered and turn on as we would when we're clear headed and feeling calm. Like those scenes in movies where the two people are like so turned on and they're like tearing each other's clothes off and they're kissing. They're like, this is okay, right? You want to do more? Like that's not the way to have the conversation and not the time to be having it. So, I feel strongly about that. Of course, I've done the same thing at times. And in the heat of the moment, said, yes, let's do it. And that's not the way I want to move forward. So, So it comes down to the general rules were make decisions while you're clear headed and not all turned on, and don't change agreements in the heat of the moment. Things have to stop and cool down and have a clear conversation before sexual boundaries can be changed. That's very important. So that's what I felt inspired to come and share. Oh, there's the other piece. Oh, that's actually what I titled the whole thing about. So there's that piece. So that's one chunk. And then the other chunk was other times when he and I did get pretty hot and heavy sexually, and we only did what we'd agreed to, and I was fully in choice and totally desired it. Pretty much each time we would kind of expand the boundary, like the first time that we got naked together, for example, each time that it kind of expanded into a next level of intimacy, even if I felt totally in choice and totally on board with what happened, the next day, almost every single time, I had a huge trauma response and complete freak out. And so what I started doing for myself is when I still felt really good about the experience, the experience was really fresh in my mind, exactly what our conversation had been was really fresh, I would give myself a voice message about what decisions we had made, how we spent time together. It was as if I was like kind of telling, a bestie or whatever, but I recorded it in a voice message for myself so that I remembered what I felt at the time, because I knew that the next day I was probably going to feel very upset and differently. But that was a part of me, that was an old part of me that was coming up and feeling scared and feeling like maybe we'd gone too far and feeling like all of these old things were coming up. And I was able to go back to my recording that I'd made for myself and go, no, I was really in choice. I was really clear-headed when I made that decision. I really enjoyed the experience. Nothing happened that I wasn't totally a full yes for. And the one exception to the rule about don't change any boundaries in the heat of the moment, the one exception is you can retract, you can change your mind. can totally change your mind. If at the time when you felt clear-headed, you're like, yeah, I totally want to do XYZ. And then in the heat of the moment, XYZ no longer sounds like fun or a really great idea. You could say, I've changed my mind. Can we back up a little bit? Can we please take some deep breaths? This isn't feeling so good for me anymore. That's the one exception. You can always downgrade. Always. And not feel pressured. And if pressure's coming up, then you're like, we need to stop now and we can go have a conversation. And that's important. It's super important for someone like myself, someone like my friend who called me. We have had sexual trauma in the past. A lot of women have. And in order to move beyond the sexual trauma so that it doesn't come up every single time that sexy time is going on, there has to be very explicit boundaries, very explicit conversations, and a lot of them are with yourself. So like I said, I would have a conversation with myself. I would leave myself a voice message while I was still feeling really good. And then the next day when the kind of rebound happened and the trauma was all coming up and all the fear and all the freak out, I would be able to have a real clear conversation with that part of myself and say, it makes sense that you're upset. This was a new experience. It was old stimulus that's kind of activating and triggering these old memories. What happened in the past is not what was happening last night. They're different experiences, so I was able to kind of clarify with new evidence for that scared part of myself. And it took more than a few times. And I was very conscious about making sure I was really checking in with myself and going, I'm not overriding myself, right? I really am making choices from where I really am. And it's not like I'm overriding and forcing. It's important. This video definitely got way messier than I anticipated, but I'm sure it's something that I'll talk about more than once. So, yeah, it's time for me to go get dinner. All right. I'll make a new one at some point with this conversation a little clearer. Yeah. Have a business meeting before you get sexy. Make it clear. Don't make any changes in the heat of the moment. Make sure you talk to yourself about like what you really were in choice about, what you really chose, and what you really a full yes for, so that when the trauma comes up, when the old stuff comes up and tries to convince you that it was all bad, you're able to talk through how it actually wasn't the old experience. It wasn't what happened in the past. Boundaries were followed. Things were communicated about, so. New experience, old stimulus. Okay. Well, thanks for being on the receiving end. I hope you found this helpful. And have a great day. Bye.